Call the meeting to order. And roll call for quorum. Everybody's here. We got quorum. So it brings us to public comments. Anyone have any public comments you'd like to make at this time? Going once, twice, all right. So we have the approval of the agenda for the February 17th meeting. Do we have a motion to approve that?
So moved.
Okay, second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Approval of the minutes from the February 5th meeting. Motion to approve those. Second.
Second.
All right, all in favor? Aye. So it brings us to the strategic planning review. So be ready to.
All right. And so Doug's not here, so I don't know who I'm gonna pick on today, but I hope you guys are ready to come up to the board again. So, yeah, so basically, since we last talked, yeah, Jared, I appreciate you sending you all your comments.
Yeah.
And I definitely, I believe they're reflected in here. Like,
Okay.
we definitely read over them and incorporated them.
Appreciate that.
But so, yeah, so basically what we did was we took all of the sticky notes and kind of did like our, I don't know, analysis, and then also just kind of taking all of the other, like our staff expertise from other initiatives and also some of the survey data to try and condense them into these 4 objectives. I also want to point out that we did, kind of based on all the information that you shared and kind of the different priorities, we also went ahead and drafted a mission and vision. So we're also going to talk about that today. But so kind of how we're gonna, kind of our process is that we're gonna kind of address each section one at a time. We're gonna start mission vision, then we're gonna do each objective like one after another. And I want you all to answer kind of like 3 questions on your sticky notes. So, and those 3 questions are gonna be kind of like, I wish, and I wonder. And so we're first I want to, like, we can kind of do them all at the same time, but what I want you to think about when looking at each of these is like which elements of, like, say for Reinvent the Housing Commission, which of these elements really stands out to you as something that you are extremely supportive of. This is like a key priority for you that's reflected in here, something that you like about the goal or objective. And then.
So what are the 3 again, Joe?
I like, I wish, I wonder.
Okay.
And so for I wish, so those are things that you would like to see changed. These are things that aren't reflected in here, things that maybe are not worded as like specific or like not reflective of what your perspective is. And then the last one for I wonder, like that's more so of like just kind of like asking questions of your other commissioners as to like maybe this isn't something that I know that I want change, but it's something that I'm thinking about while I'm reading this that I want to make sure that we at least talk about, or that I want to make sure that we're not leaving out. But so kind of to get warmed up, I want to start with the mission and vision. And so the way that we generally think about, you know, mission and vision are things that are important for you all to have as kind of like guiding principles, but they are also very broad things. And for a county housing commission, you know, it's a very like the work that you all do and your priorities are pretty diverse, at least in the housing space. And so, you know, we can only get so specific, but how we generally like delineate them is that the mission, we like to start with a 2, because it's like, we are what you're doing. We are, in this example, supporting and empowering housing solutions for residents of Ottawa County. It's like, that's kind of like, you know, in from some perspective, the role of the Housing Commission is that you're not building a home, but you are supporting and empowering all the different, you know, stakeholders and everything else. And then the vision is less active and looking at what the ideal space is, or what the more like looking at the impact. And so the one that we drafted up was fostering an ecosystem that provides a wide range of needed housing options while valuing the use of public tax dollars. So we're looking at all of these different elements, all the different stakeholders and possible committees. And then we're also thinking about how, you know, in the strategic planning session, the like for sale homes is definitely a like emerging as a priority, but it's like, but there is still a need for rental housing. And then there's different populations within that were identified as priorities. And so trying to keep it broad and saying like, it's the needed housing options. It's those ones that were identified as being like not keeping up with demand for, and for including all of those different groups. But then also there was also kind of a consensus about not overusing tax dollars and kind of like fostering, like private development, but then, kind of like balancing that, not having strictly government built homes,
So question.
Yeah.
In the vision, while valuing the use of public tax dollars, would it be worthy of mentioning that we also want to value the use of private investment and enterprise as well?
So I think that is, you wonder that in a way. So what I want you all.
I
to do
wonder
is
that
write-
also, Pat.
Write that down on your sticky note. And so I want you to try and think of a like, a wish, a wonder, but if you have more than one of each, that's totally cool too. And if you have less, that's also fine. I'm not gonna force you. But then we're gonna kind of come up one person at a time, put them up, and I want you to try and put it along with what you're thinking about, so like Pat's sticky note right here on the end. Wondering about, is it worthwhile including valuing the private sector? Because we recognize that they're the ones building the homes and many of the stakeholders that are participating. That's a great first example, Pat.
We want to put them up there.
Yeah, if you're ready to start putting stuff up, you can go ahead. And here I'd also like to encourage people to do like one idea per sticky note, so that we can kind of like keep things separate and not have too much listed together. So how does that sit with everybody else? Is that something that would be
Up there too.
Oh, I like that, the partnership between the private and public. Yes, it is.
I think that's where we could tie in, what Pat was saying. Because that's what this board is it is a tie,
Yeah.
between the two.
And that is, I feel like that is part of the county's position between local units especially and
Yeah.
private sector, that it is kind of like a bridge convener.
Yeah, and we don't want to limit our influence and reach to just simply, public tax dollars, because I think we've already established pretty clearly that solutions to getting the number of housing units that we need are like way beyond the reach of any kind of tax dollar solution. And they don't really fit the application of, working families,
Yeah.
who are clearly looking for opportunity, not subsidy or support. So
Yeah. Absolutely. And what did you put up here?
I just was wondering in the mission statement if we should include solutions for residents and potential or future residents of Ottawa County.
Oh, yeah.
Because one of the things I believe we identified the last time was a lot of people were choosing to live outside of Ottawa County for financial reasons. And I would think that we would want to attract
Yeah.
them back into the county instead of just limiting ourselves to the people that are here.
I think that's a great point. And they're also one of the fastest growing large counties, so.
Yeah, and we used to have this where you belong thing or whatever, but, that would be part of it. We would like you to get out of Muskegon or Kent County and come spend
Yeah.
dollars that you earn here with us.
Definitely. And then Clint, what did you throw on here at the end?
Just wonder where the public tax dollars are specifically coming from. Obviously the public, but why are the taxes high? Can those be lowered?
good point.
I think then there is also a different perspective on whether using federal dollars versus state dollars or local dollars.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can tie in the private and public sectors together for that solution. That way it's not one sided.
Yeah, my thoughts are more specifically around residents of Ottawa County. But just, are they being nailed with a little extra, and that's what's causing a little bit more in their housing costs?
Definitely.
Yeah, I don't know about you guys, but I hear property tax increases are quite detrimental to people who either want to sell and then buy somewhere in Ottawa County. Or just, they keep getting raised and they just can't stay in their own spot. So,
All right, so we got a couple wonders up there. Is there anything that stands out to you guys that you like? Or anything that you like more wish specifically would be, like, how do we feel about the, like, support and empower? Do those words fit for you guys on what the mission is for the housing commission?
I think so, because I think it keeps it broad enough for when, you know, the need is more for rental than
Yeah.
for sale, it still encompasses all of that, so.
And it doesn't target fixing a specific thing.
Right.
It lets us go where we perceive the need to be rather than housing solutions or, you know, it doesn't say zoning solution or this or that.
Yeah.
It's you drive a truck to it. That's what I think we want, mission statement.
You know, I think it's missing something. And support and empower housing solutions, but seeking out housing solutions. You know, to actively look for that.
Yeah.
And invite that versus, you know, passively waiting. I mean, this has a kind of a passive lean to it. You know, if something comes up that looks like a good solution, we can support and empower it, but you know, are we really finding every opportunity? Are we encouraging people and organizations to come forward with potential solutions?
Yeah.
And would we not gain a great deal by, you know, bringing as many of those in as possible, and then supporting and empowering?
Definitely.
So to seek out and support and empower would be, I think, yeah, more.
How does that fit with everybody else? Do you think that fits into your all perspectives as to what the mission of the housing commission is?
Yeah, I don't matter to me, it can be in there, that's fine, I think it's also fits under support, that's part of the seeking, but. Yeah, putting them in there is fine too, so.
In my opinion, I like how short it is. And it's not. Trying to encompass everything, but yet it gets the point across.
Yeah, I would say we're adding 3 words: seek out and support and empower. I mean, it doesn't. I agree, shorter the better, but
I think support just includes that, that's all.
seeking out, I really,
What about the term, if I may, activate?
well. Activate,
Makes it sound like we're doing the work.
yeah. I think if somebody asks, you know, what is your mission? If we say to support and empower. That's great. But if it's adding to seek out. Support and empower.
Yeah.
Then we're inviting, you know, we're actively inviting those solutions.
That's a good point.
You know, unless we're assuming that we already got all the solutions we need and that it's just a matter of.
Yeah.
Supporting and empowering them, but I don't think we have all the solutions that we need. We have to seek them out.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, we can add that with just the one word, to seek, support, and empower housing
Yeah,
solutions.
Right, yeah.
Does anybody have anything else that they'd like to point out from mission vision? We can include or like kind of incorporate these different ideas with another draft and share it with you guys before we're sharing it with the board of commissioners. But also, like before, if you have something that comes to mind for mission vision, you can absolutely go back to it. So we'll move us along to, so the first of our 4 goals. So in trying to, you know, group all of your different ideas and priorities together, we felt like we had separately talked about kind of what the future is for the housing commission and how that was kind of, you know, like a different priority that when you discussed at the board level that like Doug and Josh had brought forward. And 2 of the questions that we talked about were different committees, but then also kind of what your vision is for the board. And so we kind of grouped that into one initial goal and objective, because we, see that as like, this is it's not something that's just gonna happen overnight, that if there is gonna be a process for this about dissolving and creating, identifying new board members, creating those different commissions. So we felt like it was, at least for the next, 2 or 3 years, that this is something that will be a goal of the board, is to kind of like make this modification. And so what we had written was transition from a statutorily regulated commission to a more nimble and locally responsive advisory board, which kind of fit the consensus that the board had talked about before. And then for composition, we talked about 9 to 11 members, incorporating the idea of 2 county commissioners, 1 rural and 1 urbanized. Some then key representation from zoning, finance, lending, construction, realty brokers, civic leaders. And then also that the existing housing commissioners would be reappointed. And then we specified with the establishment of some working committees and the ability to make appointments, and to kind of why that is, to overcome the different identified barriers. And then proposing some of the different subcommittees that were the most voted on, those being finance, land use and zoning, development, construction, and then kind of like a advocacy convening for some of those different populations that we talked about, with like seniors and like unhoused populations and that sort of thing. And then preparing and sharing draft bylaws like with the Board of Commissioners. It's kind of like another like step in the process that will be crucial. And so kind of looking at this through the same lens that we looked at for the mission and vision, that you guys to think about anything that you like, or that like really resonates, you're glad to see included, that you would hate to see not make it into a future draft, anything that you wish would be changed, and anything that you wonder about.
I think it summarizes what we talked about pretty well, so
Like to hear that.
looks good. I liked it.
I just had like more members and added diversity of members.
Cool.
Wonder for the county commissioners if we had bipartisanship represented, so that way it's not heavily leaning one side or the other.
And also recognizing that there was a lot of different types of people that were brought up in the strategic planning for like types of members. So I feel like we have a pretty good list of those included, but I'll say it's not exhaustive.
For me, it was more the county commissioner
Yeah.
side of things.
But I think it's a great idea.
And for me, I wonder what is the difference between a statutorily regulated commission and an advisory board? What are the pluses and minuses of that? Because I don't know what the first one is, and I don't know what the second one is. So those are my wonders. I don't know what they are. And then my other wonder was, we talk about appointing here, we don't make it clear who appoints. Is the commission going to appoint the subcommittee members? Is the commission going to appoint the subject matter experts? Is this group going to do that? I think that needs to be really clear about how that happens.
Good point.
So I think, and Paul, you can hop in if I'm saying this incorrectly, but so the difference between the statutory and the advisory boards is that like the current housing commission setup is following statutory requirements that like limit the number of members specifically to allow for federal funding opportunities. But the federal funding opportunity, the like primary one, has not in the last like 15 or 20 years funded new communities. And so Kent County already like has that established and has the funding and are able to use some of that funding in Ottawa County. But it is like at this point, basically impossible for Ottawa County to become like a new participant in that funding scheme. And so in order to add more members and basically just to kind of like create that ability to have a lot of different types of stakeholders and some of those different things, we need to be like freed from the statutory requirements, because we're not really using those statutory requirements and they're like getting anything from following those.
Yeah, statute, good job. Statute allows no more than 5 members. And as Joe mentioned, just to reiterate, it is designed to be a public housing commission where you can get vouchers from HUD and project-based vouchers, home choice vouchers, so it's kind of a Section 8. That type of programming is set up with the Grand Rapids Housing Commission, and their service area is Ottawa County. But we don't need to be a statutorily authorized housing commission. If we want to be more nimble, add more members, we don't need that statute. We can create our own board.
Question for you, Paul, and I wonder, our current MOU will have to be re-upped. I think at the end of this year anyways, but if we do break off from the statutory side of things, we'd have to revisit that.
Yes, new language in there, yes,
Yeah.
yep, good observation.
Wasn't it? Kent County has the federal funding for those vouchers, and they're primarily using them in Kent County, right? Is that just because there's not enough for us to also do it, as far as those vouchers of funding goes, or?
They have vouchers, yes, available for residents. They do like a lottery system.
Uh-huh.
They open up vouchers, and if you qualify, you get on a list. And they do have basically just the way the demographics work. There's more Section 8 subsidized housing available in Kent County than Ottawa. So that's one of the larger limitations.
Okay.
They do project-based vouchers, so that's developers come in, we want to do very low income housing developments. Grand Rapids Housing Commission does an RFP every year. And any developer, nonprofit, for-profit can apply to that RFP, and they might say, and we often get some that'll say, I got a project in Ottawa County. Let me try and get this vouchers to subsidize my units, but again, demographic composition, we're a little bit different than Kent, so they have more of that type of product in Kent County.
And we also work, like Paul regularly meets with them, and we've done introductions, like to help connect the like Kent group with. Like local nonprofits and things for some of those different like projects to help facilitate that.
Is there any statutory allocation, like guidelines that? Hey, Kent County, you can't like keep it all, you're gonna be also managing this aspect with Ottawa County that. You know, there has to be some apportionment for them, or?
It's a good question, I don't know the specific answer.
From what I remember, Paul, is that those numbers come from the federal side of things, so those aren't even numbers that Kent County can control.
Yes, they receive what they get, right?
Yep, so they just go off of what the algorithm is for what the federal government says, so. Unfortunately, and that's why Ottawa County's really had no control over that side of things anyways, and why statute made sense to.
But usually with allocation, there's some guideline kind of gets written into that,
Yeah.
may or may not be followed.
May need to look into that and see. I know that through our experience here in Ottawa, and when Grand Rapids Housing Commission expanded their service area, because they knew that we would not be a public housing agency. They asked the question, how do we engage with your landlords that provide low income subsidized housing in Ottawa County? So we've been having those connections with Good Sam. Aaron is here, and just building that relationship. I think maybe that'll help that distribution out over time. But looking at what requirements are is a good thing. I noted that.
Yeah, I'd be curious to hear.
You said it was nearly impossible to get the funding for that. Is that just because we don't have hardly any in Ottawa County, or
I think
does the federal government just view us as one larger chunk and that's just centered with?
I could be wrong on this, but I think from the last time that I looked into it, that they just hadn't issued like an application for new housing commissions to be a part of it. Like it just hasn't,
Yeah.
like they haven't like opened it back up for new communities to join.
I see, okay.
There was rumor back in what, 19 or 18, and that's why this got kicked
Yeah.
back out.
Yeah, that's why they re-propped up the housing commission for the county. 'Cause they're like, oh, well, let's do it.
Yeah.
And then they learn over a few years that would never happen, and then Grand Rapids at the same time was like, well, if they're not gonna do that in Ottawa. They petitioned HUD and said, well, let's expand our service area.
Because the needs are definitely there in Ottawa County, just not near at
Yeah.
the level of Kent County.
So it's not the limit that we didn't try. It's the limit
Oh,
that the federal
we
government.
definitely was pursued.
Oh,
Yeah.
If there's any other additional input or clarification,
Update you before the next meeting, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, so we've been in communication about how can we add people to their wait list from Ottawa County, if we can help qualify people, so that we are getting more vouchers used in Ottawa County for Ottawa County residents. Yeah.
that's one of those seeking out opportunities as needed.
I just want to touch back on, the wondering about appointments to subcommittees. So we had included in here that the ability to like independently make appointments to subcommittees. But I do believe that just like appointment to the housing commission would lie with the board.
Housing authority board, yes, with the county, and I think in our bylaws. As Joe mentioned, we did indicate independent appointments, because I think we noted that, or you all did at the strategic planning session, that can be built. Very specific and intentional in the bylaws. The ability for the housing authority board to create subcommittees and to appoint stakeholders at their discretion. To have that ability in the bylaws.
Yeah, because statutorily, currently, the Board of Commission. The chair actually has the authority to put people on the board.
Yes. Yes, unilaterally.
Right.
It's interesting. All right. Would anybody else have any different thoughts or things for future of the board, or does this kind of fit? I feel like this is, like, it will be a topic for the Board of Commissioners, so I want to make sure that is shared correctly.
Yeah, it'd be interesting how we can get the bylaws. I think is what's gonna be the main bread and butter of how we're gonna operate this. Yeah, situation.
So is our goal to have a set of proposed bylaws to put before the county commissioners, or are we asking them to do it, or?
No, we're not. I think I believe that some bylaws have been drafted and shared, so those would need to be refined. With the timing, I don't anticipate that we need to share this plan with bylaws to the board for March 2nd. We can share this, say this is where we want to go. We can hear how they feel through strategic planning, and then they may say, you know what? We might want to do this in April. Give us your bylaws. So we have some time to get those refined.
Okay, good.
As I'm it's not on a sticky note, but I think one of our thrusts last time was kind of maybe not call it, it's there as advocacy. And you said, okay, for the unhoused advocacy for seniors. The other one I don't want to miss there was, we talked about people who wanted to live here, who had just come out of college or had just come out of trade school. That was actually one whole subsection. And I think in the commissioner discussions we've had, those are important people that we want to specifically say that we want to attract. We're losing our Hope graduates, we're losing our Grand Valley graduates. They can't afford to live here. I don't want to lose that with the term advocacy. I personally would like to say, we really need to help those three groups.
Young professionals.
Yeah, the young professionals is good, we talked about, guy comes out of Career Line Tech Center. He's body shop guy or something like that, and he's gonna drive here from Grand Rapids because he can't live here, do his job, or he'll put his business there. So I don't want to lose, I think that's a vibrant part of growing the community and not letting it stagnate. We gotta keep bringing the young urban professionals, be it vocational or college, in here as rapidly as we can.
Do we add into that, assisted living for people with disabilities?
So, what I want to point out is that, so in our, I don't know, many of these, the subcommittees are kind of like related to other objectives of the housing committee. Or housing commission, and so in our, like, kind of where that, like, what we had called advocacy, that like subcommittee would be more in this kind of like fostering the collaborative, proactive housing ecosystem. And so we kind of identified the different kind of like, I don't know, like target populations or different kind of like priority groups So I think, yeah, like young professionals and just kind of like, I don't know, highlighting some of that like workforce housing, I think would be great to add on there, but I think that's kind of what the single word advocacy encompasses is like these, community, like helping to bring these communities together.
And there could be a chance to think about that target population in item 3, facilitating construction needed housing, and maybe speak to who in that space.
Therefore, that true demand line.
Yeah.
Price one.
You know, really great points to bring up. All right. So then moving on to, our second goal would be to overcome local zoning barriers. And so kind of broke that into 3 objectives, being supporting local officials and examining and implementing opportunities. Our second objective was to study and identify opportunity parcels for development. And then our final objective was to kind of develop some like high level site designs and kind of like start with that first step of, hey, we have a parcel identified, here's like what its potential is and what can be done with it. And we wanted to make a note that I think one of the things that we hear talk about a lot is this like idea of model zoning. And I think that one thing that our office has done is to like identify like barriers in zoning, but that what those like what the final outcome is of like the, I don't know, the best zoning, that means a lot of different things for different communities. And so we leaned away from like specifying it being model zoning as like our action that we are creating and sharing with local units, and more so trying to have it be that we're like working alongside to allow what they want in their community. So it's kind of like working with each individually, because we have so many different communities that have, you know, like different priorities. And if we just hand them one thing that's for everybody, then it might not be received as well as a, you know, a good relationship and working with their specific community.
So when you compare like local zoning from one township to another, there's a lot of identical language. Are they individually inventing it and just happening to use exactly the same wording and organization and how they lay it out? Or are they getting language from, say, trade associations, you know, law groups that practice zoning? You know, where does all that language come from that looks so identical from township to township?
My guess would be that it's from them hiring like consultants to help with their master planning or like zoning, like text amendments.
And
then
they're
it's-
getting it obviously from a source, but the reason I ask is that while I understand not wanting to say, here's the way to zone this, you know, get it approved, or clearly that won't work, but if they are effectively borrowing language from, you know, some more centralized source or more, you know, aggregated zoning language source, can we reach out to whoever is working in that sector and ask them, you know, do you have any, you know, language that you've created to facilitate a zoning commission that might be inclined to you know, want to expand, like ADU language seems to be pretty commonly used throughout the different townships. And you know, are there solutions or proposed languages that aren't coming from us, but are coming from their trusted sources? Obviously trusted because they're mimicking it or they're using it, you know. Okay.
Yes, absolutely. I think the idea here is to provide language options that move us in the right direction, but it's a menu
Right,
for each
exactly.
community of your options, as opposed to the point of model zoning. That's often, people always talk about model zoning. I've never found it to be overly effective because every community is different, but I love a menu of language, and I think we can build that.
Like model zoning is really easy to discard. Oh,
Yep.
that won't work here.
Totally.
That won't work.
Yeah, no, we just want to take,
The thing that
find what
our
works
office
for you.
tries to avoid is making a report that.
Yeah.
People
Right.
thinks looks nice and then goes on the shelf.
But if we were able to go to that source where they're getting their zoning language. And look to see. You know, you're already, like, your zoning administrator is, you know, belongs to this association or works with this group. And they have a variety of proposed zoning ordinances that afford an opportunity to create, you know, use of, you know, special land use, you know, small complexes, whatever, like if that's already been invented.
Yeah.
And we can just like bring it to their attention that, you know, hey, by the way, you know, we're not proposing anything that isn't being done like all over the place. To the point that this language is already, it's been promulgated, it's been tested, it's been. Like, if we could find that source and reach out to them, they might be able to say, yeah, I mean, like this, like. There are 800 townships all over the United States that have adopted this very specific language, and here's what they're doing.
Yes, absolutely. It's not a single source, it'd be a range of sources, but yes, we should cast the, part of it's casting the net. That
Yeah.
is. That happens, but yes, being more intentional about doing that and engaging with specific. Again, intentionality is huge.
And I think to identify them as a partner, because so many of our municipalities utilize the same groups for. Like design consultants or like, I don't know, different,
Planning commission.
yeah, like, so I think that that is a great partner that we haven't identified yet as some of those groups that are helping, also helping.
And doesn't it seem to be that a lot of our areas are waking up to the fact that they suddenly found out they were zoned so they could put the solar farms in or the battery storage facilities in, and they didn't really realize that that was allowed, and the battery storage guys showing up and saying, we looked at your zoning. We fit, give us permission to do that. And I see in other counties, a lot of people backpedaling and trying to do ordinances and prohibit things.
Well, they can't prohibit anything now.
Yeah,
The
that's.
state will override you. Doesn't matter what you do.
So, anyhow, my wonder question was, who and how do you change a zoning ordinance? Is that the commission you have to get to? Does it have to get voted on? Does it, I mean, when we're zooming in on the zoning barriers, what's the mechanism to get that changed?
Zoning text amendment that would like go through the planning commission and then. At least at the city level, then would also then be approved by city council and has like a whole public hearing process and.
Yeah,
It's whole body,
extensive.
yes,
Yeah.
not easy.
And I can speak from experience out to a township meeting on, last week. Rural township, zoning fit this developer's program. I mean, he even was under density and they still denied it. Everything fit, he had everything, eggs, or all ducks in a row, everything was dialed in,
No tax subsidy.
no tax subsidies.
Hits the rental mark you want.
It hit the funding. Or not the funding, it hit the price point for workforce housing, he was gonna add 56 units. Out of the 91 that he was allotted for that property. And yet the township still denied him because it was too dense still,
Where was that?
Talmadge.
Did they have
Because they had
residents
neighbors.
come in and complain
They
that
had,
they didn't want it?
3 neighbors come in and complain.
They listen to the neighbors.
But if it's within the zoning laws,
They went
he-
PUD,
oh,
Yeah, they wouldn't be,
bad move. Yeah,
should buy right.
it would have been a great move, township would have.
Right, so, yeah, they have to reconvene. It can get pushed, but why I bring that up is because even if the zoning allows it. We still have that huge variable. Of we showed the need.
Mhm.
It's a bona fide need, we showed the solution, bona fide solution. But yet. We had 3 neighbors dictate. What could and not happen on this gentleman's own property that he's owned for 20 years.
All right, so we have a large public relations and education task.
100%, and I think that's the piece that we're missing.
And I don't see how we're gonna, I don't see that. I know Pat was talking about something earlier about conferences and stuff, but.
Well, one thing I want to mention is that, so kind of how we looked at the different goals was that. Like overcoming local zoning barriers was kind of like from the government side,
Yeah,
whereas like facilitating the construction was then from kind of the developer side. And so one of the things that we included in here was like provide support as needed to enable in navigating local zoning community priorities. So I feel like we think our like role as a county is not necessarily to like sway public opinion, and you know, like that's a, I don't know, a tricky thing to navigate, but that in types of those like education and making sure that like developers are making educated decisions and being able to like have open communication and education and all those different things, that we did want to include that as like a, like, what is like describing correctly our role in helping to make sure that everybody's on the same page and making those good decisions.
that support and empower is an education piece. Truly, because I mean, one of the commissioners on there says, I don't know why everyone thinks we need growth. We don't need growth in Talmadge Township. We don't want it here. And I'm like, what? Like, I understand the sentiment behind that, but it's been zoned that way for 20 years plus. If everything fits in there, like water, sewer, everything. It was baffling to me, but at the same time, it was an eye-opening experience. That there is such a high need for an education piece, and that's where I think this housing commission can work on that. And empowering even just our constituents, but also each one of these 24 townships in Ottawa County, hey, you know, the demand is there, the need is there. Look at your zoning and get prepared for this, just like they're getting prepared for, you know, the energy.
Could I add to that? I think what we've experienced is. This general education on housing has been happening for 7-8 years. We still have the issues happening at the local level. Yeah, we just don't want to do it.
We don't want to hear. You
So,
guys can do it over here. but we don't
yes.
want it here.
So when I heard about this project in Talmadge. My first thought was, ooh, I wish the developer would have approached us first. Because if we have the ability to serve as that moderator, facilitator, convener between the developer, the community, and us. We educate on a specific project, because again, if you just go in and educate, talk model zoning and all these ideas. It won't matter when a project comes forward to a community. They'll dismiss everything they learned and they'll react to what the site plan looks like. I think we need to walk by project by project, and that's how you educate and move the needle.
Right, yeah, this project was 5 years in the making,
Yeah.
if not longer, so.
If 3 people who live in the neighborhood can come to the meeting and torpedo that much work, I think it's inevitable that that's gonna happen. To not anticipate that and have 40 people who live in the community saying, I need a place to live. My children are, my son just got married, you know, they've got a baby on the way, they wanna live here, there's nowhere to live, they can afford this, I want it. Like, if you had enough support, then suddenly the 3 people that are like, hey, you know what? My great-great-grandfather came out here in 1870, and I just don't want anything to change. I just want it to be like he found it. And, you know, when he found it, there were people that were already here that didn't want him either. And, you know, if we just went backwards to where nobody wanted anybody, there wouldn't be anything. So.
That's fine, they can want that,
Well,
but then buy the property.
Right, exactly.
And buy the land around it, if that's what you want, you gotta have
Right.
And
the
that's.
money.
A
that's
lot of
exactly-
property rights at the same time.
Well, and that's exactly what we had discussed. And the lion's share was in support of this development, but yet the board still chose to not go through with it.
But did they have people there advocating, or was?
yeah.
Like, so there were like more than, you had the 3 naysayers.
It was probably more than double were in support of it. From You name every bit of reason, which all made sense. But yet, yeah,
So people talk about, yeah, let's change local zoning.
that's our biggest hurdle we've talked about since day one.
Well,
This
yeah.
is a perfect example of how hard this is.
Yeah. Well, then,
Because what's gonna happen is you're gonna have. You know, and we had talked about this, there might be only 4 to 6 municipalities in Ottawa County that are like, hey. Yeah, I think they're onto something here, we should probably look into this. And that's probably even being a little bit generous, but, we have to start somewhere. And the advocacy part from each one of us as a board member, with our relationships that we have, is to discuss with the people we know in the movers and shakers in our areas, to have those meaningful discussions as well. So it's a little bit more organic and not from a top down. Ottawa County's pushing this, Ottawa County's pushing this. That'll never work.
no,
And I think that's where our goal is there, so that's like, we're doing that, supporting the locals to help them do what they need and are comfortable with. And then kind of the things that like the county can do is helping with some of the identification of parcels, because that's like a great, resource that we have. That also was like identified by you guys in the strategic planning, and then that ability with the, like. Those like high level designs, that's sort of like big picture thinking is like where we can help on the individual basis. And then also providing what other support they need that's less prescriptive and more like case basis. And then also recognizing too that like this is not fully including what the like potential is for a zoning subcommittee, and like who is at that table and all the different things that are gonna be great coming out of that we think, I don't know, will be determined in the future. Can I also wanted to just point out something that you had mentioned earlier about Pat's idea for like the trade associations and different things that we did. I made extra sure to include trade associations as one of our groups in there for hosting educational and idea sharing opportunities to make sure, because I do think that that is a great idea, and that is I don't know, something that I had not heard before and wanted to make sure was called out specifically.
I just had a wonder on the study identified properties, why isn't that happening already privately? Like, why does the housing commission need to do that? There's such a demand, there's probably gonna be someone out there who is actively doing that. Searching for properties to develop.
I think,
Developers are. The big box ones are, they have staff, full-time staff on. That are literally just, their main job is just to hunt.
Yep, and sometimes it's too small, they're like, well, I'm not gonna touch that, that's not worth my time into it, I like working 150 units minimum.
So here's an example and an anecdotal. So Holland Township. They recently completed an inventory of underutilized vacant parcels in their community, and I commended them for that. I was like, every community should do what you did. Because that's very intentional for them to say, hey, we've got a housing challenge. Here's properties. And that makes it a little easier for developers, say, perfect, and it shows that if a developer finds a parcel and they start to work on it together, it's way easier than a developer finding a parcel, coming to a community, and say, hey, I'm gonna do this. If the township's right there with them, I think it maybe helps grease, for lack of a better phrase, right, grease the skids a little bit more. So I'd like, so I think it says there, Joe, you put in collaboration with local units of government. So I think that's something that I think we just advocate for. Townships do this, find some parcels. Now let's work, let's sketch it out. Let's work through your zoning, let's connect with developers. Again, developers are doing that independently as well. I think this is just adding more.
In fact, to Pat's point, Holland Township has done this great thing. That's a best practice. Could we bring the other townships together and have Holland Township share? This is our best practice. Let it come organically from a township rather than coming from the county. You know, you guys.
Yeah.
This is what we did. This is why we did it, and this is what the results are. Let them talk to the other ones rather than us.
Yeah.
Trying to
That's
get
what we're-
together.
And I think
Yeah.
that like, so like in our educational opportunities and host things, like local units government is one that we're like, yeah, like that's a great example of what like our role could be is to help get people together for that sharing.
There is another tool that could be put in the toolbox. Decades ago, the city of Pittsburgh. You know, everybody knows the story of the steel industry, you know, it was booming, World War II, you know, 50s, 60s, and then as. You know, steel production started moving overseas, along the rivers, the Allegheny and the Monongahela. Leading into Pittsburgh, there were huge steel mills, coal processing, coke processing factories that stretched for miles along the river. The companies that owned that property, when they shut down, their taxes were very low. And when developers said, you know, this is all like prime river frontage and, you know, none of this is being used. And the owners of those properties, which were, you know, large corporations, were looking at it like, you know, like this is just getting more and more valuable. I mean, we hold out for 30 or 40 years, we're gonna, you know, make a killing selling it. And our taxes are low, it's not costing us anything to sit and wait. So Pittsburgh said, wait a minute, you know, like we've got a development over here right on the river that is assessed at, you know, $100 million worth of tax revenue. And right next to it is this vacant factory that is an eyesore. And, you know, we're getting, you know, valuations of, you know, $100,000 for the property and we're not getting any money. And they said this property, even though it's not developed, still has enormous developmental value. And they increase the taxes proportionately. And all of us, I mean, I hate the idea because it's taxation, but what it did is it got rid of all of those, you know, dead old factories that were never gonna be, you know, revived. And they had this amazing, you know, river frontage that they developed. And, you know, today, like if you go to Pittsburgh, like, you know, 40 years ago, that was just like an abandoned wasteland right on, you know, the two biggest rivers that, you know, came together to form the Ohio. So, and they couldn't get anybody to move on it. But when they changed the taxation, the valuation of that vacant land, then suddenly it didn't pay to just sit on it and let it waste. And they got the development that they wanted. So
I'm gonna go on record and say I'd rather not tax people into making those decisions.
yeah, and I agree. I mean, that could become a tool of evil. And already a lot of elderly people who live in our county are being taxed to the point where they can't afford to live where they lived forever. And I could see that that could also end up even exacerbating that. But if there is a particular parcel that has all the potential and it's just sitting vacant and, you know, low valued, I think if we could show that, you know, if you rezone and you allow this development, and also whoever owns the property shouldn't be selling it at a fire sale, they should be getting top dollar for it. And the taxation side definitely created an unfair advantage against the steel companies that own that property. But if you did it in a way to where, but it instantly raised the value of the property too. And when they did sell, they got way more for it than they would have ever had if they revived the factories, which probably would never have happened anyway. But if there's a way to reward the person who owns the property, encourage them to sell at top dollar, develop it, and then you've got all of the housing available and you have enough of it to where the individual unit price is not, you know, beyond the reach of the target group.
I think that, you know, with our, like, the our close work with the brownfield redevelopment authorities and like some of that work for showing the potential for underutilized sites. I feel like by working with communities to identify those buildings or like parcels to say like, this does have a lot of potential. And then it is working with them to figure out how to encourage redevelopment or visioning what they want to help see that without necessarily, like forcing a hand or increasing tax dollars.
Right, I mean, that's what the TIF stuff is,
Right.
isn't it? Like, hey, we want this developed. And instead of taxing you and forcing you to develop it, we're gonna make it lucrative for you to develop it.
Yeah.
So please develop it, and then we're just gonna give you tax breaks on what we would have been charging, but it's better for you. And they go, oh, I can do that.
Yeah.
Instead of, you're gonna develop this.
Well, then the seller could also forego the transfer tax. I mean, that, on some of these larger parcels, that's a huge number. So that could be an incentive too, but that's out of our purview, of course.
Yeah,
But
but as a Brownfield Commission member, I will say that is. The scenario is not really happening all that well, and we need to facilitate that as. Part of the Housing Commission and part of the link with the Brownfield folks. I know Paul said we're getting a map and we're identifying all these Brownfield sites, and we need to match them up with the developers and explain. Cause the folks who have done it, it's been really good for them.
I wonder, Joe,
Mhm.
if are they explicitly mentioned in part of our subgroup? Brownfield and TIF.
We mentioned explore creative, financial tools, lenders, land banks, brownfield.
Okay.
That's building capital stacks.
I figured that was in there somewhere, but
So yeah, it's a process. We kind of looked at this as a incremental process to move forward of understanding, build relationships with communities, find parcels, connect with developers, build the capital stack and activate.
Yeah, and just like on a to a lot of extent, on a case by case basis to help like when people are ready and what they like want to do, that will be able to, I don't know, curate some of those capital stacks. And because I don't know, the opportunities change and housing TIF wasn't even around a couple of years ago.
right, so that for the Housing Commission to be able to be more educated on that would be huge too. Cause I'm sure there's a lot of developers who don't know the opportunities that are really out there for small and medium sized developers to take advantage of those projects.
Yeah, we're fortunate. We have Becky, who's like one of the
Right,
foremost experts in
Oh, yeah.
the brownfield space here, and they've yet to do correct me if I'm wrong, Ken, but a housing TIF for sale units. It's always been rental.
Yeah, it's always been rental, and it's always with the caveat that so many have to be rent controlled.
Mhm.
And
AMI certain,
Yeah,
yeah,
so
For an X amount of time.
for X amount of time, and they're very, very specific, but I think we can open it up more just by knowing all the stuff that is available out there, because there's a lot of fences around places that are really nice pieces of land
Mhm.
that are sitting there, and you drive by and you say, gosh, I wonder why there's nothing there, because there's this, yeah, okay, well, it's probably needs to be identified and figure out what it would take to remediate the damage, because, our ancestors were not really nice to where they built factories and stuff.
Yeah,
I mean, some of the history of what's going on in Holland down along the waterfront, and what used to be the Civic Center was a tanning factory, and
Muskegon County is the same
yeah,
way.
Muskegon, you sit there and you look out, and there's just big fences where what is it, Campbell Wyatt Cannon Foundries used to be. But nobody can do anything there.
Yeah, so I wonder, if that's, a further conversation we'll have for sale housing from a county level, if the county can say, hey, the county owns this property. Identifying property owned by the county, that would be an opportunity for some of these that could go up for public bid with the covenant. Restriction of it has to have this, and this.
Yes, that is, yeah, we listed county properties in there to identify, and that's definitely currently being activated. Yes.
I think with our mission statement. We're solutions for residents of Ottawa County. If every proposal that we have or every idea is specifically tied to how is that benefiting the residents of Ottawa County? You know, what do the residents of Ottawa County gain from this? And if we can show that and show that the focus is entirely on benefiting the residents of Ottawa County, it's not to benefit a developer or to, you know, benefit a landowner necessarily, although they should benefit because they're residents as well. But if everything that we ultimately develop has this proposal or this idea has this, and these are the benefits to the residents of Ottawa County. For those seeking homes, for those who already live here, for those who have businesses and, you know, provide services to the people of Ottawa County, you know, that these are all the benefits of these ideas or proposals that it shows. I mean, ultimately, if we engender a lot of community support countywide, then the likelihood that these things will go through, you know, goes up exponentially. You know, when you got 3 people that don't want it and 6 that do, you know, is that a sufficient ratio of interest to, you know, carry the day? Versus if everybody in that community was able to see the bullet point, I get something out of this. I had no idea. You know, I had no idea that there were gains that, you know, might affect me as well.
They still won't like that 20 acres that they've looked at for their whole life, being developed. Never get around that.
No, but you're not gonna win that person over.
Yeah.
But if you let that one person just go, you know what, I don't care what good it does, I don't care about anything, I don't want it. That voice gets comparatively smaller when you've got a whole lot of other people, you know, saying, hey, you know, we need a hospital, or we need, you know, we need better fire protection and we need a building here. And you don't want it, but you know, the rest of us, our lives are improved by it. I mean, that's how all.
In a perfect
It
world.
is, but I mean, you know, I mean, we could talk for a long time about the reality of how these things happen. People get in their minds that they don't want something. Look at all the misinformation that's out there about solar farms and battery storage facilities. They're gonna blow up, you know, in 1932, a battery exploded someplace in Baden-Baden, and now this one's gonna blow up, and we're all crazy with these urban legends, and then it just grows and grows and grows from there. You know, all the people who squawked in Zealand about the baby formula plant wanting to expand a little bit. And now people have politicized things like the battery storage facility, so you have different elements within our own board of commissioners that are going to those meetings and saying, yeah, we should not do this, or we should do this, and that's just, it's not easy.
It's not easy, but I think those are apples and oranges when you consider how Michigan has been disproportionately targeted for alternative power, if you want to call it
And
that.
we got water,
Exactly.
that's why.
And we need to protect that resource.
Yeah, I'm just pointing out
Yeah,
that
yep.
the same person who says the battery plant's gonna blow up is the same person who's gonna say, we don't want this here because those people won't move in here. And our property values will go down. And da 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 da, that's how this stuff goes. We got a whole education process, which is, in my mind, why I thought starting with, we need places for our young urban professionals to go there, your children, so they can be by you, is a much easier sell
Mhm.
than some of the other things we've been talking about. I mean, don't you want your kid to be able to live here? They can't afford it now, so let's solve that problem, because we can all get behind that.
Right, and to the point, that absolutely benefits the residences of Ottawa County. It'd be hard to say, you know, we don't really mind the brain drain, you know, these kids are learning a lot of good things and they're getting out and being productive, but we're losing them. Most everybody could say, yeah, that's not good for us. We need to,
Yeah, And when you go around the county and you talk to people, there's a lot of people that will tell you, I would love, my son or daughter would love to live here. It's a great place. So they have a fair job. I mean, that's something we can sell and educate on that.
Yeah,
I think it's part of our, I feel like with like helping developers navigate that, like I think in my community in Grand Haven, like it's always a big talking point about how our school enrollment is declining. And I feel like that, you know, when people bring that up in the sense of like young families can't live here. And so we don't have as many kids in the school system and then all the negative impacts on that, like, I think that is community dependent on what our priorities and issues for different communities. And I think that is something that, you know, like we are helpful with the data in that sense, but that if I told that to everybody in the county that Grand Haven's enrollment is declining, then they're like, okay, who cares?
I think there's just a fatigue, honestly, from residents too.
Yeah.
Of like, oh my government's here to help. Again. And what more new taxes am I gonna have to pay because of their helping? If we could say, hey, we're trying to get out of the way, we're trying to actually put your tax dollars to work. To then be able to foster that relationship with that private public partnership to make this happen. So that way we can get out of it. You know, I think that's some of the sentiment. I don't want to say propaganda, but it's. And that's part of the education piece as well.
We have part of that. I think like City of Holland couldn't get teachers, right? Don't they offer a stipend to people to come in to be teachers and they offer them a housing allowance with the ability to buy a home in the community? And they also to Hope College and, you know, they pay for part of you to go to Hope if you come back and teach in the community. So part of that's already out there and okay. Just,
Yeah.
We need, and it's really okay because people think it's a great idea. And I have, you know, friends whose kids are teachers who've asked me about, you know, Holland and, you know, the program that they have to help people relocate here. So there's opportunities.
I think it's important too to think about, you know, the housing issue is such a large thing that has so many different solutions for it. It is like also important to keep in mind that, you know, like as a county housing advisory board, like where is our most impact, you know, from some of these different things. And I feel like that's like obviously such a great opportunity that would be cool to see if other communities would be interested in learning from City of Holland doing that. But it is, yeah, like where is our impact coming from?
It's another best practice for a best practice sharing, like we talked about Holland Township.
They get a nice stipend, but they still can't afford a house.
But I mean, could it be improved on? Probably. Will it have to be if they want to keep teachers? They'll figure it out.
It comes down to getting the right people appointed on local planning commissions. Because they're half the Holland Township Planning Commission. They verbally stated during their public meeting, no one wants an 850 square foot house. They're not interested. And you get realtors are saying, well, yes, there's people that want it. They just, so you can talk to them all day. It comes down to bringing a real project forward and a swell of people.
I could probably sell 10, 15 in the next month.
I think Grand Haven City said something recently.
Minimum.
Oh,
yeah.
Look at smaller. They just don't, yeah.
So that gets back to
It's all four of
the
them,
branding
just
issue.
people I
Maybe they
know
don't
on my
need to be called
street.
smaller, they need to be called affordable. Cause
Affordable
smaller,
is-
everybody goes, oh,
Affordable is a relative term.
smaller has a negative connotation, in my opinion.
We call it, yeah, traditional sized homes.
Cause I mean,
Like the houses you all grew up in or your parents did.
Yeah.
we're still in.
Or still in.
40 years later.
Yeah.
So it's, to me, it's more of a systemic thing where Paul was saying, okay, so how do we advocate for A, people to see the need, B, people to be in the right positions on planning commissions. That's not a, hey, we can knock this out in 2-3 years. This is a systemic change for the next 20-30 years.
All right. So I think that was some great conversation, getting your guys' kind of feedback on kind of like what working with local units would look like. then like I mentioned before, that we also kind of wanted to, like, there's a lot of different ways in supporting development and like developers and kind of the private sector. And so our overarching goal, we called facilitating the construction of needed housing. And then for the objectives, it would be, so then like connecting developers to those parcels that were, like, would be identified with local units of government. And kind of like, yeah, providing some of the support for kind of like some of those conversations like we talked about, but then also like helping to reduce some of like the local administrative barriers, like you mentioned, it's like a priority viewing, just kind of making sure that things aren't in the way. And that doesn't always specifically relate to zoning, you know, like specifically. So then kind of like leveraging like local business interest in support of workforce housing was definitely a priority. Like workforce housing was a large topic for you guys last time, and also in the survey. And just how important, whether they're actually building the homes or not, the local employers are a huge, like, asset in these conversations. Then curating market demand and public support for traditionally sized homes, so kind of like the Small Footprint Homes Initiative. Support and advocate for fiscally responsible capital stacks. And so that's, you know, we're not just throwing a bunch of tax money at these projects, but we're trying to use our different partners, like local lenders and other like financial opportunities, but then the Land Bank Authority, brownfields, some of those different tools. Then we have pursued demonstration showcase opportunities. So it's kind of like, yeah, helping to demonstrate what the potential is of a site that like can help. I think the Talmadge Township project is like a great opportunity that like there's different ways that that can be shown. And also then kind of tying in some of our other departmental priorities about like the water conscious, you know, you guys had mentioned that like groundwater and some of these other things are all like interconnected. And so just helping to yeah, I guess like demonstrate the potential for some of those different projects. And then lastly, the like implementation of a home rehab program. So that's something that was also brought up, was kind of like making sure that existing housing is still like maintained. And I know that there are some, like the Community Action Agency has some money for home rehabilitation, but just kind of like continuing to explore that as a like topic that, you know, we want to add additional housing options, but also to maintain, you know, what we currently have so that we're keeping a good base. So yes, this is definitely a little bit more, probably the most complex of the goals.
A lot going on.
And I don't think that these are, I feel like some of the, like, I think the, like, local zoning barriers is a little bit more sequential, whereas I think that this is more, there's a lot of different ways that like Housing Commission can be involved in these different things. Yeah, so kind of, I encourage you to write on your sticky notes any likes, wishes, or wonders that you have, and show them up here.
That whole thing to death already, didn't we?
Yeah, just a little bit. The shared well septic among multi-unit designs without access to infrastructure, I think is huge. It's a huge barrier for what we have in Ottawa County. It's just, we don't have a whole lot of infrastructure to build off of.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, I talked to the health department quite often in my job, so. That's a pretty good all-encompassing. So are we thinking that's a subcommittee in itself, number 3, or is that just a goal for the overall commission?
So I think that 2 of the subcommittees that you all have kind of identified as priorities was kind of something that's more like financial focused. And so I think that that would like address some of these in terms of the like looking at capital stacks and it's mostly capital stacks, but then the construction development was kind of like one, like another subcommittee that was talked about a lot. And I feel like that would be a big target for some of these issues about, yeah, like identifying some of those common problems and discussing ways to reduce administrative barriers.
Having somebody from the lending finance side with Freddie Mac and
Yeah.
and a kind of experience of what conventional requirements are. And it's the majority of the buyers out there are if they finance this conventional.
Yeah.
So,
I think, and I feel like I see it representative as, if, as a county, our work with local units of government is much more straightforward as to like how we can support them. Whereas with the like private sector, like it is like, it is a different lane for us to participate in. And so it's how can we best, like approach this from different ways and support without, I don't know, with recognizing that we are still a county advisory commission.
well, because there's local banks here in West Michigan that have their own financing where they don't sell the mortgages on secondaries. So they hold the mortgage, so they have a little bit more local control over it. Those are some of those movers and shakers in the private market that would be good to have.
Yeah.
On board. That's literally putting money where your mouth is.
Do I see a sticky note over there, Pat?
Well, I don't know if this is the right moment, but obviously this is kind of a national issue. Is there anybody out there doing, like, could we find a municipality that kind of went through this phase and, you know, did the development and got past, you know, the worry and, you know, where it actually succeeded and we could, you know, be able to cite some examples of communities that embraced, you know, what we're proposing that, you know, had a lot of gains and, you know, I think the biggest thing about change always is fear of that it's not gonna work or that it's gonna go in a different direction. And being able to say, well, you know, here's where it's been done before, and here's a really positive case. Look at all the gains the community got, and a lot of the fears just vaporized because, you know, they never materialized. So once people got past, you know, that worry and they took action, then, you know, there were benefits all over the place and, you know, some anecdotal, some, you know, actually, you know, numerical, measurable.
There are examples all over the place. Yes, just finding the right way to introduce that, right? That's part of that education and seeing what they're doing up in Oceana County. You know, as a business owner, it's like, I can't get workforce. I'm gonna become supervisor, and then I'm gonna change the zoning. And then I'm gonna build some houses for my business. That's what he did. Those examples exist.
It's a systemic change.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
I think when I tried to look at it, there were some people, counties in Michigan that were doing some of this good. Washtenaw was one that was doing a good job. Grand Traverse was another one, trying to find communities that sort of looked like us, but all, they were doing one part of it really good, but not all of it really good. I guess probably that's what we're gonna find. Yeah, Muskegon was another one who had done some things good, but again, you got the other argument is none of them look like us.
Yeah.
And when we got the, we're Ottawa County, that doesn't work here syndrome, but
And the county is much different level because you will find case studies, but it's a municipality that's 5 square miles.
yes, they did a really good job.
Yeah, that's hard to translate to 600 square miles.
Which is primarily a
Yes.
related in manufacturing.
Mhm. Much different scenarios. So those
Yeah.
those case studies, yes, they exist. It's where's the real impact that you can really move a needle on?
So I think
That's the question.
when we started this, we wanted it to be community led. In the demand and the drive to have community members be like, hey, I want to do this, why don't you let me? And piggybacking off that educational piece along with it. Because if their constituents are saying, hey, I need this. And here's all the data to back it up, it's within my right to do this. Why won't you let me do this? And then that change will start to happen where, well, somebody's gonna run for supervisor now and.
Yes.
Or somebody's gonna run for the planning commission, and it's gonna change, but it's not the next day.
Yeah,
No, but even knowing that that could happen. Has a way of waking up, the holdouts that, I could lose my job. Because I'm trying to block something and now most of those political positions, run without. Any competition, the primaries, maybe they've got somebody running against them, but, you know. It's just like if 5 people show up to a zoning meeting, it's like, well, what do we got here? And at 40, then, it's panic mode.
Yeah.
So. Having people that just say, yeah, I'm gonna run because we need to make changes. Will. Influence the people that are already there. To say, maybe it's time to. Kind of consider some stuff here. So.
So how do we, as a housing commission, support, foster those activities and conversations?
Not to keep hitting the same point, but I've seen a lot of work done in, meetings, expos, like where you have an event and you bring people together. And what I've seen happen over and over again is that, you've got maybe a class on, how do I affect my local politics to improve housing opportunities? And you get a speaker who comes in, you got, 15 people sitting in the room. You think, it's not a very big turnout, but the 15 people didn't know that there were 15 other people or 14 other people that wanted exactly the same thing, that valued the same ideas. And so you create a network and you empower them with information that they didn't know was available. You introduce resources, and a lot of the speakers are, they're consultants, they're, service companies that clearly get a benefit if it happens. But that's okay, because that connects the people that are like, I really don't even know where to start with this. I know what I want. I know what I'd like to see, but I mean, it's just like this wall. I see no doors and no windows and, but I'm interested enough and this course description sounds like it could be very interesting. And, you've got exhibitors that are paying into, hey, you bring those people in, I want to show them what I got. And it would take a year to plan the whole thing to make it work. But when I talk to people, like I go to the dentist, or I go to the eye doctor, or I go, have a beer at the local bar and I talk to people, they all want it. Very few that don't, there's always the crusty one. Hey, I don't like change. I don't want anything to change. And they're not going to be around forever. So putting something together where you can pull all those people in to an event where you show that, wow, it's well attended, a lot of people excited, a lot of ideas put out in a matter of, 2 or 3 days. And then you have all the networking structure that, is inherent to the people that want to provide the services, that want to sell the products, that want to build the homes, that, I might have a property that would be really great, but I don't want to sell it for like a fraction of what it's ultimately going to be worth. And how does that affect me? And there are a lot of people that are curious about that. And all of those things can be addressed in an event like that.
yeah, when I think for like our, I don't know, like moving on to like an objective forward, but I think that is that's our county role as like a convener. And I think that we had like listed some of your ideas for the like, or expo / like workshop kind of, and I wanted to include your point about the comparable communities, because I think that is something that is like always helpful for people to see, and just making sure that we're looking at like residents along with all these different parts, because you're right, that like having just general community members is important to have in there. Yeah, so just broadly speaking of this goal as a whole, Like, I think that that's our, like, thinking about that kind of subcommittee that we talked about, but then also that is just what sort of opportunities to bring people together to get more conversation, to make sure that people who aren't talking are talking. And like all of those different opportunities, I think we're kind of encompassing between more broad scale education opportunities and getting folks together, but then more specifically, kind of what types of, like, what working with the local nonprofit community for some of those different, like, population groups that we talked about with, like, the unhoused population eviction prevention, and how that kind of is like a type of housing that is not really talked about in a lot of, in like affordable housing often. And then seniors, individuals with disabilities, just kind of like low income households, and kind of that overlap between some of the different, like, housing affordability and just basic needs in general. And then, like we talked about before, like young professionals and just kind of like the workforce. Yeah, so this is definitely a very broad, and not sure what types of opportunities would actually come out of this and what is identified as the greatest need for putting on something, or what type of demonstration project is, shared by Holland or whoever. But that's kind of the intent with this, is that education and convening and getting people together.
If the county had like, several projects for elderly people that, can no longer physically live in their own home, but they don't have really anywhere to go. But you create, structures and complexes that can house them. When they move into their property is gonna go up for sale. And probably, it would be their ability to be able to afford to live in this, specialized, community. Requires that, they sell their property. And so by housing, older people that are struggling where they're living, but they don't feel they've got any option, that opens up more housing. So, I mean, everything is connected together. I think if you try to target a single solution, then the tendency is to not look at the fallout everywhere else. But if you look at it more holistically and, circle back to how does this help the residents of Ottawa County, then you end up connecting all those dots for people. So it's like, well, I don't know any old people, or, I'm gonna live here till I die or whatever, like. But if they see that, well, wait a minute, all of this is kind of working together toward, a bigger picture that benefits the residents of Ottawa County, that, everybody can see a win in there. Like, wow, I really like that. I don't understand anything about that, but this looks good. But it's all connected and it all supports itself. I think that's doable.
Some sticky notes.
I have a couple, I guess. Just maybe wishes, in this category here, I see a lot of talking, I don't see a lot of listening. And if one of the things that we want to do is to have this organically come from the residents of the county, we maybe ought to start by listening before we start talking to them. And do we host a number of listening sessions, go to zoning commissions or whatever, and say, these are all the things that we see out there, tell us what you think about that before we jump out here, and then at least when we do something like this, we can say it's as a result of what we heard when we listened to the people, rather than this is what we think we need to pour down your throat. The other one, I wanted to capture, we talked about it, was just the whole idea of around our own county. We discussed a few things in here that we're doing well. Identify them. Best practice sharing is really, really a powerful tool. And what's really kind of funny is when you give people the opportunity to come share their best practice, they'll go find one. Because they like the recognition of being able to share that they have something. So that was a really powerful thing back when I was in the business. You'd have 15 plants that all did the same thing, and you'd say, okay, come here and show me the thing that you do best. That's great. Now everybody else go copy it where it fits. So I think that's going to be a real thing, trying to get 32 zoning commissions to all row in the same direction on a boat. It'll be tough.
I agree, that was, I mean,
Yeah, absolutely.
I wonder about Lakeshore Advantage with their new, role. With housing, and then can be the employer collaborator.
Definitely.
Being that workforce, housing is a huge need, having them. Part of this board in some sort of fashion, whether it be formal or part of a subgroup. I know they're part nonprofit, but they're,
Definitely.
even having Michigan Works. From the workforce development side of things.
Yeah.
Because they're gonna be able to share what the workforce needs truly are. The employer side can come like short advantage and what their true demand is, what they. We can get the information right from the horse's mouth. So,
Yes, yeah, and they're key to connect with those employers.
So I've got an I wonder. And to Ken's point, could we create some invitational events that, you know, actually seek out the people who we want to hear from to get their ideas? It'd be.
A developer invitational, a realtor invitational,
Civic
whatever.
leader, right, yeah.
whatever other categories we could think of, that's a good idea too. That then you get into the listening part. A little more focused on the listening part.
And we might find. Some new allies and people who are willing to, you know, contribute time as well.
Need more boots on the ground,
Yeah.
that could be the way to find them.
You know,
I mean, we have a lot of survey data to come up.
you know, and how would we structure that? How would we get the word out? You know, how many of those would we want to have? But if, and to Ken's point, if you focus on specific groups, it'll be, you know, less chaotic. I mean, if you just had a big invitational and everybody's got thoughts, but if you focused on the developers, on civic leaders, on, like, come up with a list, but get people to come in and just say, yeah, here's what I think.
The farm preservation people
Right, yeah.
could be another whole listening session.
Mhm.
Definitely. Yeah, I feel like the opportunities in this goal are endless. And I
Huge.
think it'll be once like seeing with a larger group and seeing like all the resources available and all the interested parties and what is the, I don't know, what is organized, I think will be exciting to see.
But in the step-by-step process, there's sequencing is important. So where would you put that? Like an invitational, like, and we want to hear what people have to say.
I think that for the purposes of a document like this, that is like laying out what our like bigger picture goals are. I think that getting into the specifics for like what type of event and who and at what time, I think is a little bit hasty at this point, but I think that, I mean, we can definitely be a little bit more intentional about like how, you know, how that would go, but I know that like, with your recommendations here, like there's gonna be a lot of experts at the table. So I think it'll be exciting to see what, you know, because we can only host so many things, and so what will be that key topic and all that sort of thing.
Is there a way that the county, I mean, this is a way of support, but to run like, okay, here's all your planning commissions, here's this township is this date and this time. Be a lot of maintenance, but from an education standpoint, a lot of people don't even know when or where or how the planning commission even functions or meets or.
Yeah, I think that's something Lakeshore Advantage was talking about doing.
Are you the Lakeshore Advantage?
I am, yeah.
Oh.
I can do afterwards.
Hot dog.
Yeah, he's connected already. Perfect, yeah.
Okay.
Alright, so it seems like broadly speaking, I feel like we were able to like capture a lot of your guys' priorities into a succinct 2 pages, but we definitely have some different like rewording and things to make sure that we include. I think our next step is that we're going to be sending this to the board next Friday or sometime later next week.
Sometime before the end of next week.
Yeah, sometime for the end of next week. And so if you do have like any other ideas, I'd say like before the end of the day tomorrow at the latest, just so that we have enough time to really make sure that we have this dialed in to share with them. But also, like, you know, this was, like I've said a bunch of times, like this was a quick process, and you know, like there is a lot of change coming in the future. And so I think that while this will be like this will be a great guiding document, you know, as we head into those steps and have some good big picture goals to.
You guys actually did a really nice job.
Yeah.
Putting this together from all of our little yellow sticky notes. It's a lot of work that went into getting those ideas captured. You did a good job of it.
We're very, very happy with how it turned out after, I don't know, like a week of throwing it together.
It wasn't easy.
Awesome. Well, yeah, just thank you guys again for all your, I don't know, getting out of your comfort zone and sharing all these thoughts, and I'm glad that we're able to help with this project.
Thanks, Joe.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. And Stephanie.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Yeah, take the rest of it out.
Can I take the rest of the day out?
No problem. Won't hurt my income.
Everybody.
We have any more discussion on the strategic planning review? If not, move on to public comments. And, okay, public comments, other business discussion items, the next regular meeting is March 5th, 10 a.m.
It won't be at that one.
Neither will I, actually.
Should we,
Start to derail the whole thing.
should we try to get another date for that if we've got two members that can't make it?
We can.
I think Doug said he didn't know either.
I'm
We talked about this last week. No,
Okay.
You were gone.
Yeah, I left,
Yep.
a little bit early, but
Yeah, Doug was unsure if that one worked for him too.
Okay,
Yeah,
Follow up post meeting, reschedule.
send a little doodle poll out or something, maybe. we
Yeah.
can
Good.
Find a spot to move it to. I'm sorry, I had a commitment before I was appointed to this, so.
How dare you?
Yeah, I know, I know. It's in a nicer place than this, it's
Yeah.
Florida.
Nice.
You gotta take us all.
Yeah,
well, good. So it would probably be moved into later in the month of March. Yes,
that'd be-
okay. That gives us a
When is the board strategic?
March
March.
2nd and 3rd.
March 2nd and 3rd, okay.
That's gonna happen anyway before our next meeting. So do we need a motion to change that meeting date or to seek it out or?
no, I can just send out
Okay,
a.
good. Any other comments? Anything else anyone would like to add? We have a motion for adjournment.
Oh,
Support? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.